Islands guest line. As all guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest line, isn't it time for you to discover the islands, River Islands, and Lathrop? And a home game for Anthony Slater. Doesn't have to make the 2-hour drive down to Chase Center. Gets to just roll up out of bed at around 6 o'clock, make the 5-minute drive to Golden One Center, and check out the Warriors and the Kings. And the Warriors right now, let's just start it off before we get to trades and the state of the team. Slater, who's in, who's out, as you say good morning to you, brother?
Who's playing? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Am I playing?
If you could. I mean, can you hit a three?
I might. My three's not too bad. About
Will you
25%
hustle like
shooter.
Guy Santos? Will you hustle as much as Guy Santos?
I will hustle, but my endurance is lacking these days.
Next question. Are you 6'8"? Are you 6'8"? I don't think you are. I don't think you checked this box.
Steve Kerr does love 3-guard lineups, so I'm about 6'4".
Oh, no.
I'm about 6'4".
There you go. Starting at the 3 tonight. Although your natural position's a 4. Half the roster at this point. Sorry. To answer your question, Draymond Green is out, Brandon Pajemski remains out, Kyle Anderson is out, and Jonathan Kuminga is out. That's it.
What's going on with that 4? You referenced it right there. And we had Steve Kerr on Willard and Dibbs yesterday. For those that missed it, it's on the Odyssey app and the YouTube page. But he was basically asked the question, then I'm paraphrasing. Dibbs said, hey, is it by necessity that you've experimented with Moses Moody there? And do you like what you see? And he said, yeah, it's a little bit out of necessity. But also we think we can kind of get something out of that because of so many 4s in the league are now stretch 4s. And so they're standing out more on the 3-point line. What do you like about Moses Moody playing the 4? And how does that kind of complicate things with Kuminga and Draymond and I guess potentially Kyle Anderson, given that now there's a logjam at that position?
Well, I would say, number one, I like that it gets Moses Moody matched up on bigger assignments because I think at this point, and we used to say this about Clay. Remember Clay became a power forward in his last couple of years? It's easier for him to defend bigger, kind of tougher guys rather than, your quicker guards. Laterally, he's a little bit slower, but, he's smart and he's long and he's stronger than he looks. He's got kind of broad shoulders. So I think it makes sense defensively. And, then it juices the rest of their lineups to have more spacing because he's a legitimate spacer, which they don't have a lot of. 39% from 3. Shot looks good, and I think on opposing scouting reports, I think opposing coaches say, hey, you got to get out on that guy, which is what spacing really is. Can you draw the defense out? As far as the logjam, which it is a logjam, and it has been a lot long, before Moses Moody started getting minutes at the 4. To me, the way you break up this logjam is you get a stretch 5. This roster's clearly lacking a stretch 5 is something they've at least acknowledged behind the scenes for a while now. But they haven't remedied. But if you remedy it and you get a stretch 5, to me that really adds a legitimate stretch 5, a guy that'll hit a good percentage of 3s, shoots them a lot. Obviously, Vucevic is the name we've discussed, but to me that allows you to play a lot more various combinations where you suddenly don't have to just pigeonhole everyone into the 4.
Look, we don't know what the trade market is going to present here, who's available, who's not. We heard some of the big names. You mentioned Vucevic, and maybe there's a Zach LaVine. We know Jimmy Butler's on the block here. But what if the Warriors can't make a deal or don't make a deal before the February 6th deadline, Anthony? Could they sell Steph, or have they sold Steph on taking a step backwards, if it meant taking a few steps forward later on, like this summer or next season?
Well, I mean, the 48-hour period prior to the deadline and what Steph is told is available and what Steph is told was or wasn't acted on will matter, right? He needs to. He said it in his own subtle, diplomatic way, but he wants to know that Mike Dunleavy and Joe Lacob in the Warriors front office is attempting, to make smart but additive moves, and they continue to message out that they're searching on the open market, and they're trying to help this roster, even if it's just not some, unbelievable, star level boost that we believe gets them back into contention, because I don't think anyone thinks that's actually out there. I think they'll try. To your question of if they don't, it's going to be about how they sell that to Steph, and then also, even what maybe they're hinting to him could be available this summer. On a bigger picture way, and he would know better than we would know, and we'll see. We'll see. I know how that will land locally if they don't do anything at the deadline. But as you mentioned, it matters a lot more what Steph thinks than what the fans think.
If I just took kind of like the big fish trades off the table, What about some of their own redundant parts, some of the specialists on this team? Could you see them selling off a couple pieces or flipping a couple of pieces off this bench? I mean, there's a lot of guys that are either one-way defenders or one-way shooters with no defense. Do you see any of those guys getting moved?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're like $7 million above the tax, something like that. Like they're basically a Buddy Hield contract above the tax because they went into the tax to get Buddy Hield. That was like the last move they made this summer. Buddy's got, it's a 4-year deal, but there's outs after year 2. So it's not as long as it seems, but it's still, longer term money beyond the summer. So is Kyle Anderson at this point, 3-year deal. Do you see them maybe trying to get off some of that longer term money to reopen a little bit of flexibility? It's possible. Do they try to duck the tax? Maybe. That's not gonna necessarily land well locally if they're just saying, hey, Joe Lacob's saving some money. That was like the main goal that has been accomplished at the deadline. But to answer your question, could I see them doing it, especially if the next few weeks go really poorly? Sure. Yeah, that's what typically, lottery teams do is they make financial and roster flexibility moves for the long term.
Anthony Slater here on the River Islands guest line on 95.7 Game. Circling back to Saturday night, the Wizards, they've won 6 games. They're terrible. They're going to be in play for Cooper Flag. But Jordan Poole came back to town. It's always a little sentimental. Obviously, he helped to win a championship a couple seasons ago, and we know what happened that last season when he was here. We don't need to revisit that. But what I'm going to revisit is his comments after the game. Said, hey, man, I love those guys over there. I love most of those guys over there, which triggered Draymond to reply to Mark Spears' tweet saying, I am really sorry. What were your thoughts on that whole interaction there with Jordan Poole saying what he said to the media and then, of course, Draymond Green replying to the tweet?
Yeah, I mean, it's Draymond saying what we all know, and anyone who's been behind the scenes the last couple of years understands. Like, he's very regretful of how that went down. And I think his pride kind of got in the way of like the immediate apology, and there's been so much over the last couple of years, but I think we've all seen that had a spiraling effect on the last few seasons. And clearly, like, if he could take back that decision, to me, he would probably take that back over like even the Gobert, the Nurkic, or name your other situations, especially because it's an in-house, it's a teammate. He's talked about how it really killed his leadership voice over a couple of years because it was just hard to suddenly like be viewed as a leader in the locker room when that happened. So he acknowledged it publicly, which I know like created the news cycle, but we've known he's understood the ramifications of that choice for a long time now. His
injury, the calf, is that related to the back? Is this Achilles? How severe is this? I mean, clearly it's a big injury for him. There's no doubt, but I'm saying, like, is this an injury that's going to linger the whole season?
I mean, it kind of has for a while now, right? I mean, we know he left the game, but that wasn't like just like the first time he's been on the injury report for a calf issue. And he's also been on the injury report for the back issue. And then it was labeled as a disc, that same disc that was the issue that caused, the really long-term calf injury from a couple seasons ago. They're calling it mild at this point, reevaluating a week. To me, that signals at least an encouraging level from them that they believe he'll be back soon, ish, not necessarily in a week, but not 2 months from now. But to answer your question, yeah, I mean, he's back in calf, continually listed on the injury report really over the last like month and a half at this point. So it's not necessarily a good sign. I do think they're smartly, pulling the brakes on him right now, maybe trying to reset his body, giving him a little bit of time off. And we'll see how long that lasts. But to me, the most important thing for the team without him, they need to survive without him over the next several weeks. And then for him, I would almost aim post All-Star break. If they're still in a decent spot, maybe they make an addition or two at the deadline and he can get his body right and active and kind of ready to charge post All-Star break, then maybe like that's probably the most optimistic way to say they can maybe save their season.
Kuminga, I haven't heard much of him on the trade block, and hopefully, he was ascending, no doubt. The last couple of years, he's played some good basketball, especially since December 1st, where he's averaging over 21 a game. I'm a little surprised it's taken him a while to get back on the floor. I'm hearing that he may not get back on the floor till February, and right now it feels like that may be the bigger loss than Draymond Green, which sounds crazy, right? But what Kuminga provides offensively for this team, when this team has been at the bottom 5, they're alongside the Wizards and the Utah Jazz and all these bottom feeders when it comes to offensive efficiency, offensive rating, and field goal percentage. Do we have any idea what Kuminga is going to be back?
It's going to be a bit. I mean, look, I see him on a daily. He's been very visible.
Right.
He's out of the walking boot, but he's still, the ankle's still wrapped up when you see him. He's still not, like, I haven't seen him even in a jog or on the court at all
Right.
at this point. From his standpoint, it would make sense to, like, take his time and, like, make sure the ankle's right and don't just, like, hour back and play 12 minutes because you feel like they need you on a given night. I mean, like, this is part of them not giving him a contract extension. He needs to kind of look out for himself a little bit at this point and, make sure he's ready, to hit the ground running when he does come back, which to me means that, like, later stages of the rehab, and I'd probably call him in the middle stages right now. The initial stages were like, he's in crutches, he's in a boot. Now he's to the point where he's, like, walking around. You see him on the bench, like, he's in regular shoes, but he's not on the court. To me, once he gets on the court, you can maybe start putting the countdown down. And maybe when we get into some practices and shoot-arounds, we'll see, he's playing 3-on-3, he's playing 5-on-5. Right. But we're not even – I wouldn't even say we're necessarily a week or two away from that. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking – we won't see him for sure until February, and I would probably be talking more – mid-February All-Star break range would be my, by the way, prediction, speculation, whatever you want to call it.
Wow. That's
a major
blow. How long would that absence be?
That's it. That's since January 4th. He got hurt January 4th.
I'm saying if he goes
Memphis.
to February, that's like 6, 7 weeks.
That's 6 weeks.
Jeez Louise.
6 weeks.
I mean, look, the reality is he was very high up in the air and he came down and,
no doubt,
the ankle. I mean, it's a bad ankle sprain. That's what it is.
No, I know. It's just, it's you're 100% correct. It's
but just couldn't happen at the worst time for him. He's playing good basketball. We're figuring out who he is. They need him offensively because defensively their rating is still up there, but offensively they can't buy a bucket, which we saw the other night, Anthony, against the Boston Celtics, 3 of 24 in the first half from 3. It ain't part of the reason why they're shooting so many threes is because they don't have too many players who could beat their man off the dribble. That, to me, right now, Slater's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the most schematic way to look at it. The way I look at it, like tonight and obviously last game and over the next foreseeable future, I would say you don't have your second best player, Draymond. You don't have who I'd probably say was fourth best player. I mean, we'll have Wiggins in there. And then Podziemski, at least prior to the season, you would be considering him fifth, sixth most important player. They haven't had him now 12 games. Yeah. So you're talking about 4 of your top 5 or 6, or I should say 3 of your top 5 or 6 are now out. Like that's hard for anybody in the league to win, especially a team who we already consider kind of maybe shakier depth-wise than we thought.
Anthony, we get so jaded when the team wins this much. I feel like you get jaded, too, if your team loses for a long period of time. But, like, we're spoiled, right, Warrior fans? Like, I get it. But as someone who's emotionless when it comes to this team, and you look around the history of the league, I was asking Bonte, I'm like, man, I feel like that championship aura, like when you win a title, it should last for multiple seasons. Boy, it felt like it dissipated. Like the one from just 2022 feels like it's completely gone. And maybe it evaporated, in the preseason with the punch. I don't know. You could pick different points. Like from afar, how would you explain to Warrior fans how to come to grips with what you're watching right now if no trade comes through as you're watching these games every night and you don't get a young Kuminga to glom onto and you just got Steph and there is no Draymond? What would be your advice to them in terms of how to get satisfaction from watching these Warriors?
Oh, man, you're probably going to have to buckle up for the next 5 years or so. And then, you look around, and I'm not necessarily directly comparing them to these dynasties, but, look at, like, the Patriots, and, like, this little dry spell they've had to deal with. And, now they got Drake May, and, maybe, I don't know, they kind of had a bad draft, I guess. I don't follow football, like, too intensely, but, they're kind of probably have a 4 or 5 year stretch here where they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. The Spurs. Okay, obviously with the Kawhi Leonard pick, they kind of had that 2-timeline expansion of it, but then they had to eventually hit the patch where they became a lottery team for several straight seasons. And, they struck gold. They got the number 1 pick in a year of like, I could have made the Victor Wembanyama pick. Y'all could have. Like, that wasn't some like unbelievable find. They got the number 1 pick in a generational draft, and now they're on the rise again. Let's say they didn't get that pick. Let's say they got even the number 2 pick in that draft, the number 5 pick, whatever. Their rebuild would be looking very elongated. So you're going to probably have to get lucky in the future with the picks, and maybe something will materialize. They're still the Warriors are still somewhat of a destination for free agents just because of market, and the brand is still better. You mentioned like maybe the championship Warriors gone a little bit. You still go around the league. Like the Warriors still have like a brand recognition. I don't know a lot of that Steph, but he's still around. He'll be around for a few years. So it's possible they lure somebody in the next couple of years and change the situation. But yeah, I mean, like, this is the life cycle in sports. And, look, we could go back and we did last week, right, and review the various moves. If Anthony Edwards was suddenly on this team, everything would look different, but that's just not what happened. So they're entering probably a colder spell unless something kind of reverses.
What do you make of the Phoenix-Utah trade yesterday with the picks? Obviously, question. Phoenix is lining up to go get Jimmy Butler. But do you think there's any way, like, there could be 3 teams involved, could be 4 teams involved. Do you think there's any way? I know they ideally would want to pair Jimmy Butler with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. But something tells me something else is up down there in Phoenix. What did you make of that whole ordeal yesterday between the Jazz and the Suns?
I mean, it's pretty simple. They had, I think 2 available firsts. And because of that trade and because of Steph rules, now they have 6 available first to trade. Now they gave up the 2031 unprotected Suns pick, which is probably the most appealing 2031 pick in the league, considering where the things are going. You talk about a cold spell coming. It's coming in Phoenix, but this is flexibility. Sure, this was about trying to get Jimmy Butler, but that still is requiring Bradley Beal to accept a future destination because of it. So let's say Beal doesn't, you still now have 6 first to try to maneuver around at the deadline. Try to get off Nurkic's contract. Try to get a mid-tier, a Cam Johnson, whatever. Oh, suddenly maybe they want to get him back, although they traded him for KD. But it's just about now, because everything in Phoenix right now is about now, especially with Durant's extension decision looming this summer. I mean, if you talk about domino effects with the Warriors, if it goes really poorly and if it continues to go poorly for Phoenix, you do wonder about Durant's future as immediately as this summer.
Would they possibly trade him before the deadline?
I don't think so. There's been no indication of that. I mean, just even the trade yesterday, right? That's not an indication that they're ready to hit the rebuild, right? That's an indication that they're going all in on this season. So no would be my very educated guess on it, but the league has stunned me before, and there's been stunning deadline night, night before the deadline type deals that we don't see coming.
Removing emotion, if you took Steph off the board, who has the most value on the Warriors team currently, league-wide, that could get you, whether it's capital or a player in return? Who's the guy on the team that brings the most value to the table in an open market?
Yeah, I would have said this summer Pajemski. I kind of wonder where that has gone just because, the cost control, $3-4 million for the next few years under cost control. Kuminga is probably dependent on the team. There are teams out there, there's scouts I've talked to who are higher on him. He's got a wide range of opinions on how good he can be. But if you find a team that thinks he's going to be a stud and is ready to pay him, he has a lot of value. But, obviously his contract situation looms. And then the other one I'd say, Andrew Wiggins has become a solid value contract again. I mean, 25 to 30-ish million under control next season. Really good 3-and-D wing that's going to shoot over 40% from 3. He's going to guard your best perimeter player. He's going to play 70 games. He's going to play 32 minutes a night. He's still only 29 years old. That can fetch you something. But I don't know. Is it going to get you something better than Andrew Wiggins at this point? Maybe, but probably not. Depends on what you would have to add picks to get something better.
How do the Warriors feel about Andrew Wiggins? Because he's had a solid season.
Absolutely.
I don't know if he could be your number 2 or whatnot in terms of offensive scoring as we get into who's the 1, 2, 3, or 4. But he's been very solid to your point, Anthony. He does guard very well on the ball. He's had a solid season. But how do the Warriors feel about him in his long-term future here with the Golden State Warriors? Would they be willing to maybe part ways with him? Because he is your lone perimeter defender right now. He's going to have his work cut out for him tonight with Malik Monk, De'Aaron Fox, Keegan Murray. Boy, the Warriors are so short-handed. But Wiggins, how do they feel about Wiggins?
They like him. I mean, the players like him, the coaches like him, the front office likes him. He's on a reasonable deal, especially now that his mind's cleared from his situation in the last couple of years. He's a guy you want on. It's part of why some of those bigger swings right now, even the Jimmy Butler talks are tougher for them to think about because you'd almost have to put his contract in a deal. Yet if you are in this win now situation, he's a win now player, right? Yeah. I mean, he fits the Curry timeline. He fits around Steph well. Now, is he the number 2 scorer Steph needs? No, but he's not necessarily being paid like a number 2 scorer. To answer your question, would they be willing to part from him? Potentially if a monster becomes available, right? Obviously, we've talked about some of the names that do or don't fit that, but that's probably more of a summer conversation because I don't see one of those guys coming available in the next couple of weeks. But he's not somebody they're shopping or looking to part with, but just contractually, you almost might have to eventually if the right situation presents itself.
All right, Anthony. Take care. Have fun at the G1C where they're charged up Sacramento Kings are rolling right now. 9-2
y'all ain't coming up?
No, well, I'm always in the studio, Slater. You know that.
Nah, y'all should be courtside tonight at G1C.
I want to be courtside up there at the G1C. They love me up there. They got T-shirts of me up there, Anthony. They got me out putting T-shirts.
Y'all got a studio like in the atrium of the arena. They go live.
Kyle Draper, Mike Bibby, Dusimo, they hog that studio up there. They hog it.
Hey, why can't Chase get something like that for you?
I like being out there at the gay house, Slates.
All right, you like the gay house?
I like the gay house.
The king has to have his own castle.
I like the gay house. I like chilling outdoors. Get some sunshine. Get to walk around a little bit, get some fresh air. Got some nice little comfy chairs in there.
Have a moat separating him from the commoners. You know that.
I mean, come on, Slates. You've been out. You got to come by the gay house one day. Say hi.
I will. Maybe. Next game. Who they got? They got a homestand coming up. I'll pick one of those.
Well, they got the Bulls tomorrow. I'm off tomorrow. It's back-to-back load management. And then
wait, even you're load managing?
Hell yeah. Well, come on, man. I got to wake up with you.
You're not going to scout LaVine and Vucevic tomorrow night?
I'll be doing it from my couch.
There you go. Hey, by the way, 45% from three. Look at LaVine.
I know. It's been insane. Come on. It's insane. All right, now that we're here, I know we're going to let you go. I got to ask this.
I shouldn't have even brought it up.
You shouldn't have brought it up because you know what, Warrior fans, they're listening to you, Slater. They love you. Or they hate you or they love you, but they comment to whatever you tweet out there. Would the Warriors be willing to take on Zach LaVine's contract?
I think it's something that the idea that they've bounced around. It's a hefty one, and he does come with some questions about his availability and the sustainability of the shot. But he would certainly, like the way he's playing right now, is exactly what they need. So I wouldn't say it's like a complete no, but and the other question is like, what does Chicago want for him? Right. Chicago's always like talk to anybody. They're a little bit funky to deal with. So we'll see. I'm not saying completely no on that.
Oh, man. If he drops 40 tomorrow, Shasky, we need to go get Zach LaVine. That's Thursday night. That'll be for Friday's show. Anthony, have fun up there at the G1C, man. Always a good time up at Sac.
See you, buddy.
All right, fellas.
All right, Anthony Slater here on the River Islands guest site. You imagine Zach LaVine tomorrow night comes out to Chase.